Good afternoon and welcome to another edition of the Daily Fix. I am your usual host and presenter, Advocate Tuloyani. This afternoon and evening I'm in a jovial mood of sorts because there were dramatic scenes, and I just laughed when I heard of this. There were dramatic scenes outside the Khotimampuru Correctional Services this morning as accused number 5 had to be literally dragged to the vehicles that ferried them to jail. I'm to court every day. And even when he got to court, he still had to be dragged out of the vehicles into the courtroom. You'll recall that long cut in transmission or break in transmission when everybody expected the trial to start and we had to wait. People were just wondering what was happening. The issue at stake was just this. Since this trial started in 2022, these people have been ferried from jail with leg irons. They are cuffed and they're also with leg irons. Leg irons are those irons that go around your legs. So prisoners have made an arrangement to sort of cushion, the pain and damage that those leg irons do to their ankles by coming up with protective pads. These are not issued by the prison. It is the prisoners themselves who have improvised the system such that, these leg irons don't eat away at their ankles, which can cause a lot of discomfort. So we saw, the whole day taken up by the issue, whether under the circumstances, bringing them to court in leg irons without their protective pads was unconstitutional, as Advocate Mnisi argued. But at the end of it all, Baloyi did a hasty retreat. And that was the interesting part for me because, he brought in that correctional services official. I think his name is Matala. Matala told the court that there had been a directive issued by the area commissioner to the effect that from the 15th of July, all prisoners who were incarcerated at Khotimampuru prison in Pretoria should not have those protective shields underneath the leg irons when they're being fed into prison. According to Makala, that came as a result of an escape by a prisoner in some other institution. I think it's Bavian Sport. Allegedly, this prisoner took out those protective pads and slipped out the leg irons and beat up the correctional services officers with the leg irons and ended up escaping. And to this day, he has never been apprehended. So according to the correctional services officer Makala, it was as a result of that incident that the area commissioner had directed that henceforth all prisoners should not be allowed to use those protective ankle shields underneath those leg irons. But it was interesting because, like Mnisi pointed out and Shonul also pointed out, it is irrational just to punish the accused persons for an act that has allegedly been committed by some other inmate in some other prison. So there was a lot of to and fro around this issue. And with Mnisi even threatening to withdraw if the court were to insist that the trial should proceed under those circumstances. Mnisi also threatened that he might just withdraw because, as he put it, he would not be part of that process, that legitimizes, the violation of his client's, constitutional rights, because as Mnisi pointed out, his client was in such pain that it is impossible to consult with him, such that, under those circumstances, Mnisi found it impossible, to continue to defend him, because if there's no communication in him and Mnisi, there's no way Mnisi can execute that function of representing him. So it was that back and forth, until at the end of it all, Baloyi had to back off. Baloyi then suggested that they should have the court should adjourn for a while to see whether some kind of middle ground would not be explored. It was during that adjournment when Baloyi then consulted with the correctional services officials to find out how this issue can be resolved, because it was really threatening to postpone the trial by quite a long time, because the defense was intending to make substantive applications, constitutional applications, and that would see the trial proper delayed somewhat while they address those constitutional applications. So Baloyi then consulted with the correctional services officials, and after that adjournment, he came back to court to inform the court that, well, some compromise had been reached, and it was then that those leg irons would be removed. But it was at that stage that, Advocate Munisi and Advocate Msholo were still not satisfied. They insisted that, much more has to be done. Much more had to be done. Was this, decision going to be a temporary one for the day, or exactly what is the position? So, but we had to reconsult again and came back to inform the court that, in fact, that decision has been taken at the highest levels of the Commissioner of Correctional Services, and that that directive apparently had been withdrawn or to be overlooked, such that going forward, the accused persons would be allowed to have those protective pads in place, so that they do not hurt their ankles with those leg irons. It was really an interesting, issue. But the most important thing what I wanted to find out was, why was that directive? That directive was never even shown in court. A directive like that should have come up in some kind of written document for the court to consider. But be that as it may, I think the accused won the day. The day belonged to the accused persons. And so the case has been postponed to tomorrow. Let us see how it resumes. Baloyi told us that he has got 2 witnesses lined up, and the judge ruled that, well, the matter should proceed tomorrow. So that is where it leaves things. But it really belonged to the accused persons, especially accused number 3 and 5, the people who were complaining about these leg irons. So it was a bad day at the office for Baloyi, and a wonderful day for the accused at the office. Thank you. See you tomorrow. In the next episode in the morning, I'll also give you some insights into some of the things that are happening in this time. Have a wonderful afternoon and evening. Thank you.